Hey, what's up, guys? So today we're gonna be having a team match between Team Australia and Team India. So it's just about to get underway. So as usual, you have that six players per team, and we'll be playing a total of 6 rounds with 7 minutes time allocated per player per round. And of course, the colors will also be alternating for each round. So India just came off a very hard fought and good match against Team Brazil with a draw of 18 points each. So for this time, it will be Team Australia versus Team India. So let's see how the match goes. So as usual, we're gonna visit the score sheet just before we kick off the match, and of course you have the round pairings all predefined since everyone from each team will get to play one another at least once, and of course the colors will be alternating. So Australia is gonna start off with black, and India will start off with white. So we have the team score and also the discounts that is going to be summed up at the end of the match. And you also have the usual individual top three based on points, followed by discs. So good luck to both Team Australia and Team India as we kick off this match. So we tune in to round one of Team Australia versus Team India. So you have basically Scott against mehul. So this should be a very good match. Both players with at least a 1600 rating. I think the opening started off with perhaps a leader's tiger. So right now, Black is trying to occupy the center and is controlling this two-disc centralizing axis. And of course, White is just trying to maintain a shape cutting across as well. So it's typical for two players who are fairly strong to actually start off the game in such a manner whereby they just try to intercross each other's discs while looking for opportunities to gain tempo and to try to gain that edge over your opponent. So right now, it's fairly logical between both players. White has just jumped into the center, flipping one disc. Black is just cutting across to centralize. So that's fair. So over here, perhaps White could go, okay, so White could either go H4 or D1. Either one is fine. I think D1 is slightly better because it doesn't really obstruct H4, but if you play H4 first, that would actually poison your D1. So that's a fair point and a fair move to make. So over here, Black has basically jumped out with a diagonal cut. White is approaching to the side. So right now, I would say that the game looks fairly even. Both players still playing a very good mid game. So you'll probably take a few more moves to be able to actually tell who's leading. So right now it's Black's turn. Black probably wouldn't play any moves to the right, but instead consider perhaps B4, A3 would probably be my top choices. I think maybe B4 looks attractive for Black to continue. Basically just to centralize and just keep on going, just to maintain that center shape and look for opportunities. Okay, so Black plays F7. That gives up an easy move for White in the form of G6 right now, just cutting out the quiet move. One disc flip without much creation of moves. Perhaps Black's intention is to actually follow up with H3 to just sort of squeeze one more move into the center. Okay, so Black does go into H3 and White basically jumps out. So White is just occupying a center position. Black is just taking a side chip, just waiting for White to create more moves. So white has jumped out, forming that one pocket space. Okay, so black has chosen to jump right into the center. I think the game over here still looks fairly even, but I think maybe slightly more to white's advantage right now. It seems more favorable and easier for white to play. White could choose to perhaps just jump in over here to h5 and poison h6 for black, but that would give an easy move for black over here to f2. So another option that white would have is to just play h2 and just grab the edge so that white can also gain tempo by playing f2 in the future. So I think white should probably consider either h2 or c7, gives the line control over here and makes it a little tougher for black to continue. Yep, and if black just takes this, white can just jump in and continue to poison c1. So this is quite a good move by mehul as well. But probably on the tail end of making such a consecutive row, even though it is a line control, black could actually play a quiet move on the tail end of it to h6, and then perhaps force white to respond either way. Or alternatively, if black knows that white wants to make consecutive moves to c6 or b4, black could actually choose to poison and play maybe b5. Okay, so right now white has actually taken a chip off across after black has played h6, which is a little bit unexpected, but I think it's a smart move because white doesn't want to respond a poison move over here and makes it difficult for black to continue playing. So black has chosen to take a quiet move over here. So now the whole game seems to be full of regions where it's still yet to be resolved. So it's a bit more of a confusing position. I think my experience with Scott is that he always likes to play interesting positions. And of course, mehul is also doing quite a good job by playing this quiet move down into the center on the back of this clear mini diagonal over here. Okay, so right now, after that exchange from black and white, white is now taking up a centralized position to the left. It almost seems like white is closing out the game. Black seems to be struggling over here at the moment with an unbalanced edge. White could probably feed this across and force black to form a solid wall on both ends to the south and also to the east, and then white could then jump in for a centralizing position to g7. Okay, so that's exactly what happened. So, okay, right now black is forming another unbalanced edge, and white is feeding that across. White could perhaps choose to just play h7 over here and force the corner. Okay, so mehul has played quite a good game. Okay, so just watching this game wrap up in the final moments, it does seem that um, it's quite straightforward for white at the moment. Okay, but right now black has a very interesting mini diagonal control across here, which currently white is not able to access. Okay, so right now black is still trying his very best to just control this mini diagonal that might open up opportunities to trap. So if white does grab the corner right now, black can actually solidify this edge. But I think due to parity, white probably would still be winning this game. but it would actually be fairly close due to Black's efforts into protecting the tempo. Okay, so right now, yep. So the game definitely turned out to be a very close one. So good game for both players. So let's move on to round two. Okay, so we tune into round two of the Team Australia versus Team India match. We have Ashok, who is a very experienced player from India, and of course we have Scott as well. So this should be quite a good game. We'll take a peek over here before we move on to another table, just to take a look at how the others are doing. So this is actually a Berg Tiger opening from Scott, playing as white. So usually this results in probably tough to play lines. So right now Ashok has just adopted a more centralized position. And of course white is just choosing the wraparound for the future regroup position. So typically the book move over here would be b3, or either that you could probably play a variation to f1 perhaps. So I think let's move on to some other tables and take a peek at other games right now. So this game has started between Amaroy and Di6 Jive. So right now, Black is cutting into the center, looking for probably a quiet move to f3. So White could probably defend that by just simply playing d6. But instead, White has adopted the tail end of this entire row. So let's see how that goes. By playing this and this, White allows Black to occupy this center position. I'm not too sure whether that's the best sequence, but it's still playable, I think. So right now, probably Black is just going to jump in over here, yep, to c2 to centralize, and perhaps Black is just going to go one more down the line over here to c1. Okay, so Black doesn't do that. Right now, White can actually take this move to e6 just to maintain this momentary diagonal control, but Black playing out actually creates an excess for himself over here. So right now, Black should be slightly in the lead. I'm not too sure whether g2 was a misclick actually, because that's pretty much an early x square. So I think he mentioned haha over here, so I guess it's probably a misclick, perhaps. So I think typically we indicate no undos for the match, but I think he's just going to go ahead with that. Let's just jump over to... Oh, okay, so right now Amar Roy is asking for an undo. So they've kept that option open, so that's fine. Nonetheless, let's jump and head on to another table. Let's take a look at the match between Hadar and Matt. So I think Matt played quite an outstanding game in the first round, taking 54 discs. So Matt, being one of the top players in Australia, is always a favorite to win most of the time. And right now, Matt is probably going to take as white to h3 just to control this centralized position, with anticipation that Black probably goes to a6 as a follow-up. And then it will be slightly tough for White to continue. Oh, okay, Black doesn't take a6, so probably White can just take a diagonal pocket cut over here, or there's an entire sweep over here to f6 or g6. So the rest of the moves look fairly poisoned. Okay, so this was a slightly unexpected move to feed off that centralized position for Black. Not exactly too sure how Matt intends to progress from this position on. So it does seem a bit difficult because this move does create that one more box corner square, which Black can use in the future for sacrificing the corner and going on for the wedge to exchange for more stable discs and a corner. So right now, white is doing the sweep, which is basically this diagonal, mini diagonal control, and also this horizontal line control. So I think this move probably should have come earlier. I'm not too sure. Perhaps he has other plans. Right now, maybe white can just do a feed and penetrate, but instead, white plays this move to actually feed off that unbalanced edge. So okay, so right now black doesn't want to take it because black is hoping for probably a 2 unbalanced edge position. If white takes this, black can actually go to the x square and try to feed off the corner to go for the wedge. So right now it looks almost difficult for white to continue. Black is probably okay. Black doesn't take the early x square, but instead jumps out. So right now, white will probably cut off the excess, that's right, and go for this diagonal control and also this mini diagonal control. So apparently white is going to just continue to protect this diagonal control. Perhaps white could probably go for something to the edge over here. Or, yeah, white will probably go for this f7. So basically the purpose of this is to just try to control this diagonal and just continue controlling the excess across. So I believe it's going to be a hard one to continue for white. So white will have to continue to take this move to e8 just to remove this excess and just keep on maintaining this diagonal so that black doesn't play this attacking move. So right now, if I were black, I would probably even consider something as drastic as g2. I think black should be in the lead. It's probably just a little deceptively advantage for white in terms of cutting out all the excess, but I think black should be fairly comfortable in the lead. So it is a bit of a danger whenever you try to control the excess as much as possible in Othello, and then you basically lose one breaking point, and it just all falls apart sometimes. So let's perhaps stay on to see how this game ends. So right now black has made a nice diagonal cut out for this key disc at f5. Basically cut out to the centralized position. White is probably just going to go ahead with another diagonal control sweep. Okay. So black should probably go for this, but white is going to feed off this move to just continue maintaining that control. Okay, white doesn't do that. So right now black can actually take the x square position and probably easily wrap up the game here. Okay, so black does go for that x square. So right now white is in a tough position. So this game kind of demonstrates that usually maximizing is tough to maintain unless you really have entire full control on all the lines access. So I think Matt usually does very well for slow games. Perhaps 7 minutes is still a little fast paced. So this is going to be a bit tough. Okay, so right now, just the last couple of moves in the game. Black could perhaps choose to take the corner to the top right, force white to jump in over here. Black takes the corner, white is forced to feed, and then basically black gets parity due to an odd region below. And probably a diagonal cut is typical to just sweep up the disc, or yeah, he could do a horizontal cut as well since he has this full control. So that's quite a good game by Harder, so well done. Let's move on to round 3. So we tune in to round 3 of the Team Australia versus Team India match, and we have basically Matt against Game Change, and right now white is actually playing pretty well, centralizing his discs more to the diagonal front, and of course, black still has some potential tempo moves. So black perhaps could just continue to prevent white from taking this good move over here by playing an extension out to a6 to force white to regain that excess by playing an unbalanced edge that gives him a chance to actually attack it from behind. So right now, I think black is still considering where to play. So black does go ahead with a6, prevents the position, forces white to play a7 if he wants that unbalanced edge, but white has chosen to just chase after the interior excess, of which black would be able to easily defend it, but at the same time, white is also chasing after this interior excess. So this move by white actually attacks both fronts. So black does choose to take that edge to the left, which is probably sufficient tempo for him to play one more move to the top in the future. So right now, yep, black would go to c8 just to prevent white from taking this g4. So over here, white has taken a nice quiet move, very quick, very fast paced. Probably black could consider either playing to f7 or perhaps g4 just to block it. So f7 probably you would expect maybe c7 followed by taking d8 to feed off the unbalanced edge across. So let's cut over to another game while Matt is still thinking. Let's take a quick look at some other games going on. So this is Dominic against Amar Roy. I think the game looks like it just started. So still in the opening, early parts of the game. Okay, so black has cut up over here. White probably has some potential opportunities to just centralize to the top. So apparently he's gone on to the right. So black could actually play one poison move over here, which could be quite effective. Okay, so black goes a poison move. White cuts out to the central. Black could probably take this or also this just to centralize. Okay. White jumps out over here, which may not be the most compact option, but it's still possible. Black should probably take a quiet move over here to b6, so that's fair. So on the tail end of it, white has extended to the top. Okay, so black is adopting a multiple tempo approach, perhaps, just to grab these two moves over here. So black should follow with d7, I guess. Yep. So this opens up an opportunity for white to jump in for that tempo over here. But black could probably ignore that and just play a quiet move, just to skim on the edge on a4. And if white chooses to play to e7, black can simply just defend the edge by just playing to f8. So I guess that's where the game might go. Okay, so black doesn't choose to take that. Instead, black goes up to extend, and white jumps out. So white would be able to gain one more consecutive tempo over here to c2. And then basically black is taking a quiet move across. White will probably jump in to c2 for a future tempo move to e1. Okay, so right now the game has progressed pretty much, and I think right now white has actually given up a little bit of advantage here. White can still have that consecutive tempo to the left on a6 and then followed by a5. But right now it does seem that things have evened up a bit more. So let's move on to other tables to take a look at how the others are doing. So right now this game is still in the early stages. Perhaps the game started off a little late. But right now black probably seems to be slightly ahead based on this position. So over here black has elected to jump in to cut out diagonally, and white is basically taking a quiet move in response here. So right now black perhaps would have to take to g6. Okay, black doesn't do that and gives up that edge, which is kind of strange, but perhaps white has established a poison move, so black is just going to go for d1 here. Okay, so over here black is choosing to jump out first, and perhaps white would then defend here. Okay, white doesn't defend, but chooses to give up this potential quiet move over here. So black is going to grab e1. So I believe black should be slightly in the lead over here. Yep. So white closes off the bottom. So black is probably just going to work his way around the top. Perhaps b3 first. Or maybe even c6 would be quite a good option for black. You probably don't want to play f1, I guess. Okay, so c6 is indeed played. So the reason why c6 is fine is because most of the moves to the top left are all poison for white, so it's easier for black to control the game. So right now black could probably choose to play c2 in response to this instead of just feeding off a strong edge for white, which is a balance edge and also a follow-up quiet move to c2. So instead of doing that, black could just go for c2 and just make the whole shape over here a little bit more in equilibrium, whereby white still has to try to find moves to initiate, and black could then just respond naturally against it. Okay, so black has chosen to take one step to the right instead. So that was a little bit unexpected. So white feeds off the unbalanced edge. Black takes it. White jumps in. Black should probably feed this first, followed by that. Okay, so black does indeed feed off the unbalanced edge, if possible. Okay, so white takes the unbalanced edge, which is balanceable after black has played b3. So white balances it. So right now black is just going to jump out. So if I were black, I would probably try to clear off these two discs to remove the threat that white could actually give up the corner and go for the wedge in exchange. So the next two moves by black is probably targeted at sweeping these two discs away, which would remove white's excess over here. So naturally white would want to play e7 over here, and black would then follow with e8 to sweep off the disc. For sure. And then the game looks fairly in control by black, I guess, if there aren't any surprise diagonal controls by white. Okay, so black has actually gone for an early diagonal control, which almost seems a little bit risky, but it does seem like black is able to defend this diagonal, so I think this is a fairly well thought out move by Scott, so that's good. So right now white has just chosen to take one move to the side, and of course black would probably take c7 just to continue on. And if white chooses to extend to c8, black would continue that diagonal control across to b7. Then white would probably have one diagonal control for himself. It does look like black has that initiative across, because if white does go for the diagonal control, black would be able to cut back into this e5 disc that would give him corner access to a1. So if probably white might choose to cut out first. But if white chooses to cut out first, black would then jump into the X square and form that diagonal control, which white would then have to sweep with C8, giving black the corner access first. So I think either way, this game should be probably wrapped up by black. So black is probably going to take the corner, white, black, followed by white's response to the corner over here, and black covering this position for parity. So let's see how that goes. Instead, black has played an extreme diagonal control instead. So over here, white would definitely have to go ahead with his own diagonal control. You would then have black cutting out for the excess as well. So this is also quite a beautiful move and maneuver by black, just maintaining this diagonal control across, very strong. And then black just jumps in with this disc to e5, which is the key disc that we talked about that will provide that corner access. So if white chooses to respond here, yeah, black just goes for the corner and another corner. So this should be a win for black, clearly. Okay, so a clear sweep, and white has to go for the C square with black wrapping up those discs. So that's a very good game by Scott. So a good game for both. And let's move on to round 4. So right now we jump into round 5. Unfortunately, there was a little bit of a technical difficulty during round 4. So somehow that video got lost in transition. But I think that's fine. We tune into round 5 with Scott against Amar Roy. And this should be a good one with Scott doing an early variation to the horse opening. And Amar Roy taking an uncommon sideline variation as well, perhaps, to just penetrate across and just maintain that center shape. So I think both players are very creative in terms of how they want to progress in this game. Okay, so right now black is just sort of like just clamping down and just regrouping back to that position to the bottom. Okay, and then with white jumping in across to form a group. So over here does seem like the position is fairly confusing for black because either way it does open up a nice move for white to just simply respond to maintain the center shape. So black has taken that edge move across, which is very strong. But at the same time, white is still maintaining that center shape, so it's going to be increasingly difficult for black to just find easy moves. Okay, so black is just continuing on to the edge. So perhaps if white were to just jump into g6, black would then defend with h5. Okay, so right now the game has progressed fairly quickly towards the edge play configuration, with black feeding off the edge, and white actually choosing to take the tail end of this diagonal cut, which is interesting, but it gives black an easy, compact regrouping move to c7 by ignoring that approach, perhaps. And right now, it does look like it's getting tough for white to actually come for a response. Right now, white has cut out diagonally, so black is just going to wrap around and grab a 4-disc balance edge without actually flipping this disc, so it doesn't unpoison this move to h4 for white. So I believe black should be ahead in this position. So black, with white just jumping out over here to b6, black could just simply extend down the line perhaps. and this would still be a poison position for white, so white would probably go for h5. Okay, white is kind of forced into the x square right now, so that's a very strong play by black in the entire mid-game development. So I think with no surprises, this game should actually be wrapped up by black. So let's move on to the next table and take a look at what's going on there. So perhaps we could take a look at this game between the top two individual players as of round 3, I think. So based on this shape, it does look like black is slightly ahead, perhaps. Black could perhaps just go for c8 or just feed off the corner by playing to a2. Okay, so black does go for that squeeze in to just sacrifice the corner in order to wedge to b2 over here. Okay, so right now black is extended out with white just extending out. I think in this position it looks like black has pretty much control of the center position. So I think usually that's kind of difficult for white to actually work around. White could probably choose to form a semi-pair over here, but that would allow black to just jump in to g4. So it is a bit difficult for white to actually make any headway here. So I think this game should end with black winning if there are no surprises. So let's move on to the next table and take a look. So perhaps we could take a look at this table over here. Okay, so this game almost looks like an extreme position where black has gone for a very early diagonal control. And then white is just forcefully just trying to grab the corner. So over here, black should actually just play the quiet move over here. Let white take the corner first, and then cut back into the diagonal so that black can recapture the corner to the bottom right. So in terms of that sequence, you would then allow white to take it first, but then for black to grab some excess and cut it back. So overall, if you do it that way, black would actually have more control of this lead diagonal. But right now, black is going for this first, which would result in white jumping in to wedge either one, probably wedge over here to go for this corner access, and at the same time deny black and just maintain this g7 this as white so that white can jump in. So okay, so those were a little bit unexpected, but right now black has to sweep down. So that's actually a little unexpected, but actually a very beautiful sequence by black to actually control the position. So I think black would have to go for this x square. Okay, black doesn't take the x square, so white extends. And over here, there is a danger that if black were to start off with this move, it would result in white sweeping across. So that was probably not a great end game for black, but I think it was still possible for black to actually just probably grab more disc towards the end. So I think that might have been an accidental loss, unfortunately, for black over here, but still a very good effort. Yep, and good game for both. So let's move on to the last round, round 6. So just tuning into the final round of Team Australia against Team India. And right now it's probably the table 1 match between Mehul and Matt. And of course, right now based on the standings that I last checked, it's 15 wins apiece for Australia and India, with Matt and Mehul being the top players for each of the teams. So this match should be an exciting one. I think the game started off pretty quickly with the Tiger opening to banana variation, which Matt played out. So this should be quite a tight game. I think both players should know the book fairly well. So right now with black just cutting out to the center with a fairly loud move, but still probably acceptable. Okay, so over here, black has just jumped out to the center in between these groups of white discs and the bottom, while white is still maintaining this centralized shape between this top cluster of black discs and the bottom two. Okay, so right now black is just occupying the center. I believe F2 move is a little bold, but that's just a very forceful centralization maneuver. So right now the shape to the bottom is quite interesting as well. So I think both players actually have the opportunity to capitalize on tempo quite a bit. So right now with black just jumping out to the center, perhaps white would then just take a quick and easy quiet move to h3 perhaps. Or alternatively, okay, so white does take h3, and then black goes for the consecutive tempo. With white unable to take this quiet move, but I think that was probably a misclick by white because I don't think white would have intended to take this move. Probably white forgot about his disc to f1 and thought that that was a quiet move. So I think that was probably an accident. But I think with this move, it makes it generally easy for black to actually just grab the lead here. So let's just move on to another table, perhaps. Take a look at how the other games are going. So maybe Som and Scott. So this game is progressing fairly quickly. I think Scott is just going for quite an extreme excess control as usual, and perhaps it's going to be very tough for Scott to maintain excess or line controls in all fronts. But if he does, he would then be able to wrap up the game. So over here, black is probably going to follow with b6 here. So white's consideration might be to whether to block it or not, or to just simply grab the corner for parity, or to just prevent it over here. Okay, so white does choose to block at b6. Okay, and black jumps in over here. So probably white is just going to go for that sweep just to control this, perhaps. And black is just going to jump in and feed off the unbalanced edge. Okay, white has grabbed the corner quickly. So white is probably going to try to rely on parity, but right now there's this small pocket over here that black may jump into. So it's going to be a difficult position for white to just try to maintain parity, perhaps. Okay, so white has closed off for parity. Okay, so right now we've progressed quickly into the end game, and I think right now white is just controlling this diagonal control as much as possible, and one good way for white to actually prevent black from capitalizing on this position is to perhaps take a2, but the problem is black would be able to force feed this edge, forcing white to grab this to the top, and then black will probably be able to take probably a wedge in between. So right now it's tough for white. I think either way, I would actually think that white would probably consider the x square over here. That will result in black playing this move over here, and white would probably have to play a parity maneuver. Right now, it does seem a little tough for white to get out of this. Black would probably just feed off this edge to the right and then jump in over here and try to secure parity. And I think parity might be enough for black to secure that win. Oh, black doesn't take that, so that's a bit surprising, but that's quite a good move to force the swindle across. So it's very good and strong play by black. That's a nice swindle over here by Black and making consecutive moves and with a final sweep. That's quite a good game and well played by Black. So good game for both players. And let's take a look at the final scoreboard. So right now we've come to the end of the team match between Team Australia and Team India. And of course you have the final ranking score of the team wins of 15 for Australia and 21 for India. So the discounts were 989 to 1,315. So you can see in round one it was fairly even, and India took the initiative in round two and took a 5-1 lead for that. And then followed by round 3 and 4 being fairly even, with Australia fighting back to pull it even with 15 all just at the end of round 5. And finally, the round 6 probably resulted in a difficult position for Australia, with India actually doing very well to actually sweep up the last round in 6-love. So in the individual standings, you have Mehul and Som from India, who actually took the first 2 positions, and of course Scott taking the 3rd position with 4 wins, with a total discount of 224. So with that, that concludes the team match between Australia and India. And thank you very much for joining us, and let's look forward to the next one. I'll see you guys again, and goodbye.